I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad that my presentation has been accepted by this conference, although the focus of this conference is not on piano rolls. As you know, piano rolls are important documents of piano playing at the beginning of the 20th century, just the time we are speaking about the whole time. But my point today is that they belong also to the oldest documents of editing recorded music. Okay. Theoretically, any single copy of a Welte roll has at least 4 dates and places that are important. First, the date of recording. Second, the date of the first edition, that means when the roll was first prepared for sale. Third, the date of the edition to which the roll belongs. And fourth, the date when the copy was taken. This is similar to printed works like literature or music prints, where we have the date of writing, first edition, the specific edition, and the date of print. Concerning Welte rolls, the importance of the third point was not well known until very recently. That's my focus today. By the way, the date and place of recording is mostly known or can be estimated. For this purpose, the most reliable source is the catalogue published by Dangel and Schmitz in 2006. The second point, the date and place of the first edition, can be estimated from the original sales catalogues of the Welte company. This information can also be found in Dangel and Schmitz. While the third point is an open question, many rolls have the date of copy at the end of the roll, and so you can know it if you stop the roll before the automatic rewind starts, or if you look at a scanned image. A tricky point is, however, that some rolls have the date written on the back side where nobody looks at easily, and naturally it's normally not visible on scanned images either. Actually, I don't know how often that happens, but I know at least 3 such cases, although I haven't particularly looked for them. You have also to be careful that the date is sometimes not written close to the rewind hole where it is found normally. Many Welte-Mignon recordings exist in different versions. That is what I found recently. So we have to perform a careful source criticism if we want to use Welte rolls in research and if we want to appreciate them as historical documents. I have to criticize myself that I didn't do that 30-some years ago when I used a lot of original rolls from the Freiburg collection in my doctoral dissertation. Now let us consider how Welte rolls found their way to a specific customer. First, in a recording session, a recording roll was created. There are no extant piano recording rolls, but as you know, there are extant organ recording rolls from which we can learn a lot also about the piano recording process. Afterwards, in some cases much later, a master copy was created which could be used for creating copies for sale. This is the first edition of the roll. Often this master copy was revised later by punching new holes or closing or displacing others. So the same master copy could be used for later editions that are intentionally different from the first one. Since it is possible that these changes were done by revising the original recording material, it is not easy to decide which version is closer to the original playing. It happens also that a new master copy was created, either because the first master copy was not good enough or because the new master copy had to be used in another place. The new master copy could be a copy of an existing edition, or I don't know if it happened. It could be a totally new creation from the original recording material. In any case, a new master roll is another edition of that recording. Also, the new master copy underwent further revisions, related or not to revisions of the former master copy. At any stage, individual copies could be taken from a specific edition. Is there any problem with the Zoom? It's okay? Yeah. At any stage, individual copies could be taken from a specific edition. Mostly, a number of copies were taken in one copy process. That means that several layers of paper were punched at once, so that mistaken holes, missing holes, and even inaccuracies are essentially the same. If at another time new copies were taken from the same edition, however, old mistakes didn't happen again and new mistakes happened. So even if two rolls belong to the same edition, it does not necessarily mean that they are identical. But normally, no intentional differences should be between them. So we have to distinguish between rolls that vary by chance and those who belong to different editions. If we had enough knowledge about the differences between many copies of the same recording, we could create a kind of stemma, as it is done, for example, for manuscripts of musical works. For my present research, I was not able to access so many rolls or roll data that such a stemma could be created. In fact, the only thing I did was to use the data of the Supra project at Stanford University. In this database, no recording is available in more than 2 copies, but the material was enough to find out a number of interesting things. There are 456 rolls that can be accessed online in this collection, and for most of them, the scanned image is accessible. If we look at the scans, the majority of them have punching dates. Concerning the recordings available in Supra, almost half of them are recorded before 1907. Only a small part was recorded after the First World War. Also, if we look at the dates of the first edition of these rolls, more than half of them appeared until 1909. If we look at the date of copy, however, we find the great majority being punched after the First World War, and there are no rolls with a punching date before 1907. By the way, for the rolls that have no punching dates, the black triangle in the right picture, the approximate date can mostly be estimated, and it seems that their temporal distribution is similar to the rolls with punching date. So it can be said that there are no really early punchings in the Supra collection at all, and the majority of the rolls are post-war punchings of pre-war recordings. For my research, it is necessary to look at more than one copy of the same recording. In the Supra collection, there are 39 such cases. What I did was to compare all of them carefully. The result was as follows. Only 12 of the 39 roll pairs belong to the same edition, and only one of these pairs were created in the same copy process. 26 roll pairs, that means 2/3 of 39, contain differences that are unmistakably by intention, and so they belong to different editions. Most frequently, the dynamics were edited, but there are also changes in pedaling, and less frequently the timing and length of single tones, and the tones themselves are edited. About 1/3 of the rolls that belong to different editions have only few changes. Another third has many changes, and the last third is so heavily edited that it is difficult to find 20 seconds of music where no changes were made. From this result, it can be assumed that if we take any two Welte-Mignon roll copies that belong to the same recording, it is likely that there are differences somewhere on the roll that are due to intentional change. By the way, I'm only talking here about cases that show the intention to change something in the musical effect, not about error corrections or changes for a technical reason. If we included all these other changes, the part of rolls belonging to the same edition would be even smaller. Now let's take a look at some examples. This is the beginning of the scan of two copies of Paderewski's Nocturne, Opus 16, number 4, played by himself. It was recorded in 1906 and published perhaps in the same year, at any rate no later than 1907. The second of the two copies was punched in 1912, and the first has no date, but it's definitely an earlier one. If we take a close look at it, we notice that four holes, I have skipped, the holes at the top of the scans are for controlling the right pedal and the dynamics of the right half of the keyboard. If we take a close look at it, we notice that four holes have been added on the later roll. They cause a small crescendo and diminuendo 2 times and make 2 notes that are on the lowest pianissimo level in the earlier roll a bit louder on the second roll. The musical effect depends on how the pneumatic device is set up, but the difference should be audible on any playback instrument. In the Supra software simulation, the MIDI velocity values of the 2 notes are increased by 6 and 5 degrees respectively, and the effect is as follows. Oh, we have no tone? So try again. So let's listen again. To be sure, this is a very small change, but it is the earliest I have been able to find so far. Since the later punching is from 1912, it proves that in the Welte Company, older editions were re-edited already in 1912 or earlier. By the way, raising the dynamics of certain notes is the most frequent type of revision throughout all rolls I have seen. The next example is important too, because it is an example of a very late re-edition. The earlier roll is punched in 1924, the later in 1926. That means, although the roll was recorded in 1910, it was re-edited more than 14 years later. It is a fantasy about Madame Butterfly, played by Richard Epstein. We find also revised dynamics here, but I want to show you changes in the pedaling. Some pedal changes are, pedal change means pedal goes up and down again. Some pedal changes are at the same place in both rolls as we would suspect. But there are a number of pedal changes that are only on the second roll and not on the first roll. Additionally, some tones of the left hand were made longer to make these pedal changes possible. The changes are easily audible if we compare the software emulations in Supra. No pedal change here. The next example is one of the earliest recordings of Welte-Mignon, the Schumann Piano Concerto played by Eugénie Adam Bénard, roll number 28, recorded in 1904. The punching dates are 1914 and 1924. In this roll, a number of tones are edited. For example, here, 5 tones appear in the earlier roll that are deleted in the later roll. If we bring it into notation, the 5 red notes are the deleted ones. Here, the pianist plays the orchestral part. Of course, it's a recording of piano only, and so the pianist has to play piano and orchestra. It is not clear which notes were really played during the recording. As many other rolls that are not original solo pieces, this roll contains a lot of tones which cannot have been played by 2 hands. Either they were played by a second pianist, or they have been added by an editor, such as this chord, which is in both rolls the same. But at least one note of this is out of the reach of 2 hands. The red tones that were eliminated later belong to voices of the original orchestral score, except one note that is apparently played or added by mistake. Regardless whether the 5 red notes were originally played or added later, it seems that the later editor decided to delete them because they sounded bad. Let us listen to the Supra software simulation. Once more. By the way, I have found a number of other rolls where wrong, superfluous, or missing tones were edited, but up to date I didn't find any other case where so many tones are affected at once. The last and perhaps most striking example is Josef Hofmann's recording of the Tannhäuser Ouverture in the Wagner Liszt arrangement, recorded in 1905. And in Supra with 2 post-war punchings, one of them from American production and the other maybe a German punching which is dated 1924. I've shown only the tones, not the control tracks. If we compare the timing of the tones, certain deviations can be found. Normally, small differences occur in every copy process. But here, some differences are greater than that. For example, this chord is significantly earlier in the German roll than in the US one. But more important, some chords that are almost together in the American roll are punched asynchronously in the German roll. By the way, the Bern Academy of Music owns a German copy of 1913 of this recording, which is not asynchronous here. So it can be assumed that the asynchronicity was added by a German editor after the First World War. There's no question that the asynchronicity in the later roll is intended, because accents are put on every delayed top note. These accents are not found in the earlier rolls. If a pianist emphasizes the top note of a chord that is played synchronously, the editor of the roll has a choice of either omitting the accent or playing the notes asynchronously. Here, the later editor took another choice than the earlier one. The impression changed a lot. This roll contains many similar changes throughout the piece, but up to date I have found only a few cases in other recordings where asynchronicity was added afterwards. Perhaps they added it frequently in the first edition, but it's not so frequent that they changed it afterwards. A last point I found by comparing copies in Supra is that some copies differ significantly concerning their tempo. Actually, in 7 of the 39 roll pairs, the tempo deviates by more than 2%. While smaller differences occur even in copies that are taken in the same copy process, these greater differences need another explanation. It is not clear, however, whether these differences result from the use of different master copies or whether they occurred when the copies for sale were taken. Anyway, in some cases, these changes affect the musical effect of these rolls in a significant way. I skip music examples and come to the conclusion. First, when Welte-Mignon rolls are mentioned as historical sources, the punching date, if there is one, should never be omitted. Second, the same care should be done for cataloguing. Third, this information should be the information about the original should also be given when new roll copies are made for sale today. And fourth, also CD productions and similar publications should mention which kind of copy was used. And my questions for the future: first, which and how many of the Welte-Mignon rolls appeared in more than one edition? Second, in which respects differ editions from each other? Third, what do these differences mean for the historical and artistic appreciation of piano rolls? Fourth, how can specific editions be found and described? Fifth, how can curators and collectors support researchers in this respect? And my personal cry to proceed: I need more data to continue. Whoever can help me, please contact me. Thank you very much for your attention.